Hello, everyone, and thank you so much for joining our session. I hope that you have been joining some of the other great sessions for the Houston Exponential Tech Rodeo. Our session is titled Diversity, Capital Raise, and Innovation, How One Business Owner is Breaking Barriers for Women in Tech and Successfully Raised over $1 million in funding. This is going to be an awesome discussion, and we are going to have a great time during this session. Before we begin, I would love for our wonderful panelists to introduce themselves, starting with Michael.
Thanks, Zoe. My name is Michael Birch, and I work with KPMG Spark on the business development team. What I enjoy most about working with Spark is interacting with all the various businesses from small to mid-sized businesses in every industry, really, and helping them achieve their next goal. And so I'm looking forward to being here and being part of this panel.
Awesome, awesome. And now, Fanta.
Yes, thank you for having me. I'm so excited as well. So I am Fanta Gilliam, CEO and founder of InvestSusu. Before launching the company, I worked as an American diplomat for about 10 years, living all over East Asia and Africa. And that's really where I was exposed to a lot of the informal social banking traditions that inspired our technology. I also worked as a management consultant for Deloitte. As the founder of InvestSusu, it's been a really incredible ride. InvestSusu is a fintech company based out of Washington, D.C. We build social banking solutions and an intelligent matching software for banks and governments. I'm really excited about kind of our journey to get here. We've gone through so much as a woman-led fintech startup, and I'm eager to share my experiences with you about how we became investor ready and also how we were able to raise to close our pre-seed round.
Awesome, awesome. That is great. Before we get into capital raise, you are really like dominating this area for women in tech and for women of color. Talk to us a little bit more about that. What does that feel like? How are you really working to advance women in tech? Because that's really great.
Yeah, no, that's a great question. And thank you. You know, when you're kind of building this fintech startup and working in this industry, you know, you face a lot of challenges and you really have to learn how to find your niche and really kind of figure out how to grow and scale. And so I do that in a lot of ways. You know, one is through partnerships. You know, it's very difficult to go it alone. And so I love collaborating and partnering with organizations like KPMG Spark. Zoe, you've been an incredible mentor and advisor and source of support for our company. Another way is also through giving back. I do a lot of speeches and discussions, both formally and informally, with other women and Black women who are in a similar situation where they're trying to build and grow a startup, or maybe they're trying to figure out how to navigate the venture capital world. I definitely don't consider myself an expert, but I have learned a lot over this past process. And so, you know, partnerships, really kind of providing kind of candid feedback and support for others is the best way to make it in this space.
Awesome. Thank you. Thank you for that. And we'll be hearing more about your story as we continue. Michael, I want to ask you a question because I'm sure you see a lot of entrepreneurs through KPMG Spark. One of your great clients is Fanta InvestSusu, which is really great. And entrepreneurs wear a lot of hats, right? How do you see like the assistance of a dedicated bookkeeper, the assistance of a great financial program? How does that help them from what you see?
Yeah, that's a great question. I think first, it really helps companies make better financial and management decisions. The proper bookkeeping can help the business owner understand really key financial benchmarks so they can determine what is really important for their business and where their money is going. Through the Spark software, they're able to see who owes them money, who they owe money to. They can track invoices, bills due, items like that. And so that's really an important decision to know internally for that business owner. So that way they can know those management and financial decisions can be made timely. And then the second one would also be a consistent bookkeeping will help minimize the headaches that they have. They have to worry about payroll. They have to worry about all these other expenses, overhead costs. And so consistent bookkeeping is going to help minimize that when it comes to also preparing annual taxes, because the financials are going to be ready and accurate. So the idea is you can hand over your CPA or your accountant person a well-maintained balance sheet, a cash flow statement, profit and loss. And so that way the accountant can spend their time solely making sound decisions for your taxes instead of having to worry about going back and fixing your financial statements. And so it just makes that whole process a little bit smoother for the business owner. The third thing I could think of too is sound books will help with planning your business, the next steps for your business by understanding the key benchmarks, such as like cost to acquire a new customer and cost of goods sold. You can begin to make educated decisions about the best way to grow your business in that aspect. And then the final thing I think of too is the investors require solid books. Depending on how you're wanting to scale, investors, banks, they require solid books to get that financing. The frequency of which you report financial records will be determined by those lenders, the investors, the lenders. But in any case, the more automated and uniform you can get those financial reports, the easier that process is going to be. And it's going to save you a lot of time of going back and forth with your accountant because you already know and you're ensured that your financials are already up to date and you don't have to worry about spending a week to get everything updated, just get the lending approved and to go from that process.
Absolutely. And Fanta, I'm going to come to you in 1 minute. But Michael, I wanted to ask you a question because sometimes I've heard some business owners say, you know what? Well, I'm going to have my CPA do my bookkeeping. What's the error in doing something like that? I just want, as we get into the capital raise discussion, I just want to business owners, entrepreneurs to be aware. What is the error of having your CPA do your bookkeeping? Should that be a good best practice or something they should shy away from?
That's a good question. A lot of the times, the CPAs don't necessarily want to do the bookkeeping. It's not them personally doing it. It's a staff member, an intern, or someone doing the bookkeeping. And so they want to really focus on providing value and not being in the weeds of booking debits and credits. So the nice thing is if you can set up a system that's accurate and they know it's reliable as well, that saves the CPA a headache or having to go back and review everything. And so they could focus that time on doing more consulting and tax strategy and planning instead of having to do mundane bookkeeping. And a lot of the CPAs charge hourly as well. So if they're doing the bookkeeping, that could get pretty costly if you're being charged at an hourly rate.
Okay, no, great. Now, Fonta, you live this, you experience it. Anything else you kind of want to add and share for our audience? And then we're going to get into more of the capital raise discussion.
Yeah, no, I think, it's funny. I had always considered myself pretty smart, been a management consultant, I was a diplomat, I can handle my books. I also grew up in a family-owned business where we lived by QuickBooks. And so I felt very confident in that tool initially. But what I found as we continued to grow as a company, as I got into these investor meetings, as I started tracking different products that we were running and the financials behind them, is that I didn't know as much as I thought. Unless you're a trained accountant, CPA, or some type of CFO and actually have that background, it can be really easy to make mistakes with tools like QuickBooks. Little small things can really mess up your financials. They can make your balance sheet and profit and loss statements look funny to a trained eye. And I didn't realize that until I really got in front of these investor meetings and really started to hear a lot of questions around my financials and didn't have a lot of the tools on hand before transitioning over. QuickBooks also doesn't make it easy to figure that out because it's very user driven and you got to do it on your own. And so if you want to, what I learned quickly is if you want to grow and scale your company and actually play in the big leagues, you have to have that kind of support. And oftentimes for startups, it can be very difficult to hire a whole finance team in-house to do that kind of work for you. But if you have a tool like KPMG Spark, you really have someone on call. So it gives you that assurance that my books are in order, they're accurate, and now I can really get into the nitty gritty of the finances behind my business and what's driving them and where my blockers might be. And I hadn't had that before joining KPMG Spark. So, I really encourage it, especially if your company is growing and scaling and becoming bigger than you really need to take a look at how you're handling your books. And it's a great tool to do it.
Awesome. Thank you. And, we are checking the chat. So we encourage everybody to be active. We are looking at all of your questions. So please put them in there. Now, I want to get back to the capital raise discussion. That is why we are here. And Michael, I have this question for you. So getting back to capital raise, right? Early companies may have challenges managing their burn rate. talk to us a little bit about what burn rate is and why it is so important to the capital raise process and how you're kind of helping some of your clients manage this.
Yeah, so burn rate really is the measure of how fast a company is spending its available cash that they have. It's important for capital raise because if you're spending too much cash up front, you have that risk of going out of business. And then on the other side of the coin is if you're not spending enough cash, then you're really hurting your potential in the future by having competition come in and other things like that. So what KPMG Spark does is we provide real-time reports and information so you can know exactly where your money's going at any given point in time. You can see your burn rate, you can see how much you're spending on particular categories, line items in your chart of accounts. Anytime you log into the system, anytime your account sees it, that information is going to be real-time and accurate. Instead of having to wait till the end of each month or having just a idea of where you're at, we know exactly where your burn rate's at. We also have a budget as well, which is critical for starting out businesses, small businesses, to stick kind of to that budget and to be held accountable really to that budget. And so the nice thing is because we have that automation and the real-time accounting, your budget is also automated in real time. Most of the business owners that I talk to, when they prepare a budget, they reconcile at the end of each month. And then that's when they realize, oh, I overspent on advertising, I overspent on travel, and it's already after the fact.
Right.
And so by having that real-time budget, you're able to make better, quicker, and more sound decisions about your business financials.
Awesome. Now, Fonta, you lived it. So share your experience about how it helped with the burn rate and realistically how it changed your conversation with investors and why this is so important.
Yeah, well, one thing I'll say, being very candid, the first time I had ever heard the term burn rate was standing in front of a group of investors, and I had no idea what they were talking about.
Okay.
It was awful. It was awful. And I told myself I will never be in that position again. And so one of the cool things about, having something like a KPMG Spark Video Books is that not only do you understand what these terms are, you can equip yourself with quick answers. People don't want to invest in founders that don't understand their numbers and don't understand, what my runway is, meaning how much money I have until I run out, what my burn rate is. They want to feel confident, if you're asking them for hundreds of thousands of dollars, $1 million, they want to feel confident that they're giving it to someone that's not going to waste it, that's going to use it smartly and efficiently, and someone that's going to manage that money in the right way. And if you don't know those key terms, you're going to be like a deer in headlights. And it's also going to be very, very difficult to close around. So after that really embarrassing experience, I went back and I started looking at, how I was doing my books. I was overwhelmed and I was thinking to myself, I need to make sure I'm on top of this stuff. It was funny. Having a tool like KPMG Spark at the time, not only did it give me the tool, right? And so I can log in and I can see, how my money is moving and what accounts, how they're being categorized, but it gave me a team. I didn't have the funding to hire a CPA. I said that before.
Right.
But, with KPMG Spark, I literally, Carlos is my guy. He manages my books. I love Carlos to death. I can literally text Carlos a question and he gets back to me real time, within the hour or less. Hey, what's my burn rate? How are we doing this month on this? How much did I spend on that? I can text him. I can call him. We have a weekly check-in meeting and it's like having an in-house CFO. And so I think that's the benefit of this tool that goes beyond just the technology, because you can go out and license any number of financial accounting apps and platforms, but it's having that real life person who not only is managing your books, but knows you, is responsive, and can help you answer those difficult questions. And, for all of the founders that are sitting out there right now who have a non-finance background, or non-accountant background, I would say,
Right.
It's really important to understand these terms and these numbers, because not only do they help you perform well in your pitches, but they also give you some insight into how the financial health of your business, and so that you're not caught up in a point where you are running out of money. And that's the worst situation to be in, having to go to investors when you don't have money. But it can really help you maintain the financial health and stability of your business because you have real numbers that are accurate and you got a team of people behind you that can support you when you need them. You can also, when having your books in order up front, it helps with due diligence. And that's the other side of investment.
That's the other thing.
They peel back the curtain and look at everything. And if your stuff is not professionally done, it's going to make it much harder for you to get the yes.
No, absolutely. And we know that women receive less than 3% of capital funding. So we need to put ourselves in a situation where we can control what we can control. No, that is really, really good. Awesome. Michael, I want to come back to you for a moment as you kind of describe KPMG Spark. So I heard that you say it's more than just a bookkeeping service, but more so a managed accounting philosophy. Talk to us a little bit more about what that is and why it's so beneficial for entrepreneurs.
Yeah, so managed accounting is it's a scalable way for your business to service your business accounting needs. We're using a cloud-based software, automation technology, and then human accountants. And so we're combining the software and the human piece together to make managed accounting. Managed accounting matters to our clients because they don't have to get in the weeds of doing the bookkeeping themselves. They don't have to really worry too much about are the financials up to date? Are they being taken care of? What do I need to do? Because it's already being taken care of by that human accountant. So Spark is providing these human accounts to answer those questions that Fonda has mentioned several times about burn rate, your run for money. All those are being handled by your person. You can reach out in phone call, text message, email, video chat, however your preference of communication is. We're able to accommodate and really ensure that everything's up to date and we can be held accountable for your information and it's being professionally done with KPMG.
Awesome. No, that is really, really great. Now we're going to really get into the nitty gritty of capital raise and fundraising. People think they understand what it is like, but they do not. So they do not. So you're going to share some of your secret sauce with us today. And thank you very much. Now you raised over $1 million, Fanta. How did you do that? And then I'm going to pick apart some aspects of the capital raise process. What was your first start? How'd you do that?
Oh man, it's funny. And there are others who've raised much more than we have, but I do feel blessed that we've been able to cross that threshold. And, a couple of things really helped us to get there. One, I'll be honest, is having a really strong team. Having my books in order with KPMG Spark and doing that hard work early on so that I could walk into the room confidently. Two, I had a very strong chief investment officer, NECA.
Okay.
I absolutely love her. That was one of the smartest things I ever did. NECA is incredibly brilliant, has a lot of experience, one, and a strong network of high net worth individuals, and two, getting into those rooms, which oftentimes as a founder can be difficult, especially when people on the other side of that table don't look like you. And so having that strong ally and a CIO who's not only there to help you think through how you raise capital, but is also a vested member of the team was invaluable. And sometimes it can also help to really validate you as a founder. Oftentimes I walk into in financial services, I'm oftentimes the only female, the only Black person, let alone woman, and the youngest. And so having a strong team of people behind you, like a CIO and like a KPMG Spark that does my bookkeeping and accounting, which is a brand, industry Fortune 500 name, they really give you a level of credibility and people look at you a little differently. Right. So that's the first thing that I did. I focused on making sure I had a strong team and strong resources behind my finances. The next step is really getting your pitch deck together. And I bring that up because it's like a truncated business model. Tends to be, they say no more than 12 slides, that's debatable depending upon your business. But putting together a strong, professionally done pitch deck I cannot stress how important that is. It is
now, question about that. You said professionally done pitch deck. So did you hire someone to do it? Did you Google it? Did you do it yourself? Like, what was your process?
How many times have I redone that pitch deck? At least 20 times. 20 different iterations over the course of 2 years, literally. And that might be an understatement. Mm-hmm. So it's a document that you grow and constantly update over time. Initially, it's funny, I had it professionally done and it wasn't good enough because it was
Really?
short on financials. You know, it looked pretty, right? But I hadn't really fleshed out the financial model. So then when I finally went back and took out a crack at it, and this is after a lot of product testing, talking to a lot of my clients and prospective customers that I wanted to roll the model out with, and learning a lot during about a year of research and development, I finally had a strong understanding of our product, our pricing strategy and model, and what our financial model should look like.
Okay.
Got a lot of support from mentors and also service providers who helped me put together a strong financial projections over 3 years. And then also, this time around, I didn't use a professional to actually design the pitch deck. I put a lot of my own blood, sweat, and tears in it, and I used a tool called Beautiful AI to make it look professionally done. So if you're on a budget, that's a great tool. It's free, actually, for its standard version, Beautiful AI, but you can design beautiful presentations using that tool. So it was a combination of those things, smart people helping me to get my financial model in order, actually doing the work of testing my product market fit and pricing model with users before going to the investor table. So I knew what I was talking about. And then using a tool like Beautiful AI to design it in a way that looks like you didn't just do it by yourself with PowerPoint. So all those things I would suggest. And then the last piece, and a lot of founders forget this, you know, we focus a lot on the problem and the solution and how our widget or app is the best thing since sliced bread. But if you don't have at least 3 or 4 slides to get into the numbers and the financial model and how this makes money, you're doing yourself a disservice, and you're not going to get into the rooms that you want to get into.
No, absolutely. And I have, no, that's really great information. I hope everybody is paying attention to that. And again, stay active in that chat, which is really helpful. Now, I watch Shark Tank a lot, and they're always asking about valuation. And I know, Michael, that KPMG Spark can assist business owners in not only doing the value, but assessing it. Talk to us a little bit about that, and then I definitely want to kind of come back to Fonta again. But valuation is the key name of the game, and I know a lot of founders sometimes say, "Oh, like I need $1 million or $2 million." Sometimes they do, sometimes they don't. But that seems to be something very critical that you need to get right. What do you think, Michael?
Yeah, that's a good point. I think everyone wants to be the next Facebook, and then realistically, it's just kind of hard to really get there. So what's nice about Spark is we do have a team of CPAs on staff that would also be essentially assigned to every account that does come on. And so for evaluations, we would tap into essentially one of our evaluation services and have one of those CPAs be able to address kind of those questions or concerns that you may have and walk you down that road if that's somewhere you want to go. I think that's the real benefit of KPMG Spark is we're really providing services for one of the big 4 accounting firms to small to mid-sized businesses that has really never been done before. And so I think that's the really big value is having that quality of accounting to anyone really, small, mid-sized business, any industry. It's really able to serve them and benefit them.
Nice. Now, Fonta, really quick, coming back to you. So for your valuation, did you hire somebody to kind of do your valuation? Did your chief investment officer do it? Did you Google how to do it? How did you know you were coming up with the right number?
Yeah, no, that's a really good question. So we use a couple of different strategies to figure out our valuation. Yes, I did have a team that was supporting me on that effort of senior advisors who've done this before. And so I highly recommend that because kind of calculating and crafting your valuation, I would say, is definitely more art than science. And it's very difficult to kind of figure that out if you haven't been trained and worked in that space before. So we had a team that sat down and looked at industry comparables, right? So what are other fintechs at my level in my industry? What are they being valued at? What are they raising? And so that provided a really good baseline. And we put that into a scatter plot chart, so that we could see the universe of where fintechs were being valued based upon what they'd raised and the traction. And so from that data, I was able to figure out where we kind of fit in when I compared our IP, our technology and what it could do, our pre-sales and contracts that we had, the revenue that we had. All of those different factors go into your valuation, and that's how they calculate it. So being able to speak to that, making sure that you have things that can really things that can really help you build up your valuation. Again, contracts or pre-sales are great. IP is a really, really good one. Any other assets or things that you can bring to the table really help, having a strong understanding of what those are. And then comparing yourselves to others give you a sort of a benchmark. And then from there, you know, the professionals, folks at KPMG, Spark, and others can help you figure that out. One other tool that we used is, you know, because we used a lean startup model that was really focused on research and development, designing our technology so that we knew the tech that we had and that we wanted to build, and then focusing on the proprietary value of that technology and patenting it first and then pre-selling it so that we could actually make sure we were building what our clients wanted. And by clients, I mean the banks and governments that can license our technology. That was a great tool in getting the valuation up, but it also helped us to focus more on investment vehicles like SAFEs. And I think that SAFE, for those of you who don't know, the acronym is, oh Lord, now I just blanked on the acronym. So it's for future equity, a simplified agreement for future equity. Gosh. So a SAFE vehicle is great because that will allow you to put a valuation cap offer that to investors without having to value your company prematurely. So that's really good if your product is not in the market yet, or if you've taken more of a pre-sale approach, or if you just want to delay a price round, you can use that SAFE agreement. And that's something that was launched by Y Combinator and has become a really good tool. And so we were able to use that tool also to raise on this round, which was a really smart move, I think, for us.
That is awesome. Awesome. You know, every entrepreneur thinks that they need all investors and they don't. So in terms of, if you don't want to boil the whole ocean, right? You want to kind of simplify in terms of the investors for you. For those that do not have a chief investment officer or do, how do you think they should go about assessing the right investors for them? What does that process look like? We'll start with Fanta.
Yeah, so there are definitely different types of investors based upon where you are, right?
Mm-hmm.
So early on, a lot of people they call it friends and family rounds. So you'll try to raise money from your friends, family, people that know and trust you and believe in you. Oftentimes they call it friends, family, and fools early in. So that can be a great tool if you have that. But if you're someone like me, I didn't have a lot of high net worth friends and family, to be quite honest with you. And venture capital wasn't something that my community really knew a lot about. A lot of founders find that in the African American community. And so there's a lot of ways to get friends and family. There's crowdfunding as a tool that a lot of people use. There's also making sure you reach out to investors that understand your product and the communities that you're trying to service. Can be a great way to get at friends and family investors. And so that's an approach that we took. But really, and then the next level is really, as you get into your pre-seed and your seed round, angel investors can be a great option. And so there are a lot of angel groups out there. Finding angels attached to certain affinity groups that you might be a member of is a good strategy that I use and others have used. So for example, universities tend to have an angel group tied to them. That can be a great way to get alumni to invest in you because they know you came from this institution, like they graduated from, and they're more likely to kind of invest in someone as an alumni than someone else off the street might be willing to.
Right.
So affinity groups are a great way to find angel investors once you get to that level. And then as you get into more institutional investors, and these are the VCs, the venture capitalists and the VC funds. That's kind of the next step in the process. And there are a lot of affinity-focused venture capital funds as well that people should consider. A lot of women-owned funds are coming up right now. The W Fund, for example, invested in us, and they have been absolutely incredible. There are a lot of industry-focused funds. So there's a lot of funds specifically focused on fintechs or ag tech or education tech. And so finding funds that invest in businesses that are within your industry can be a great way to attract investment also because they understand your industry and what will work and what won't work. And they also understand how to find good ideas within that specific industry. So going to someone who's not a fintech investor to invest in fintech can be a much harder sell than doing it with an investor that understands fintech. So those are some of the types of investors that we leveraged. And then the last is really around industry associations. They're great investors because not only do they have funding, but they also have a sales pipeline of potential customers. And so we were really early on blessed to get support and investment from the Independent Community Bankers of America, for example. They're an industry network of 5,000 community banks. They understood fintech. They're very savvy when it comes to identifying the next best good thing in banking and fintech. And they provide a pipeline of potential customers that we can then go and sell to using that endorsement and support from the ICBA, for example. So all of those are strategies that can be really good.
Awesome. Now that is a great wealth of information, and everybody, please keep the chat going. Great information, great nuggets we are sharing right now. Michael, anything else you kind of want to add about KPMG Spark and investors? I always know like those reports are always investor ready for anything. Anything else you kind of want to share with the audience here?
Yeah, the thought that's coming to my mind is just really how easy that kind of process looks. Is just with a couple clicks of the button, you can download your own reports and hand it to whatever investor. A lot of investors, they require like a certain style of reports, and so that's just formatting. That's that's a pretty simple fix. And so you could get these financial reports that we're producing to investors within the same day of their requesting, instead of having to wait for a couple days or a week or so. And so that's the nice thing, is having that information already updated for these investors, understanding what they're looking for, and being able to compile those reports pretty quickly.
Awesome. Now that is great information, because I do speak to some entrepreneurs and I'm like, well, how long does it take you to get your financials? And they say, well, we can request it and get it in a few days. I'm like, a few days? Well, you never know what happened in a few days. Even if you're not an entrepreneur, you never know what happened in your finances in a few days. So that is really interesting. I want to take a shift and really kind of talk a little bit more about diversity now. It is a hot topic. Vonta, you have been extremely successful with your brand, with your company, in raising money, which is great. But what lessons do you want to offer women going through the process and building their business, and also like women of color? Because they do say that investors, when you're in those rooms, are a little bit harder on you, on women. They'll ask more questions. What have you encountered, and what do you really want to share with the audience today?
Yeah, that's interesting. Well, one thing I want to point out, SAFE stands for a simple agreement for future equity. So I want to make sure people know that correct term. That's important. Now, it's funny. I remember being in an investor meeting. We're pitching virtually, and this is during COVID, which made it doubly hard, because it's hard. How do you build relationships and rapport over Zoom, right? But we were doing it. And I remember one of them saying, gosh, you guys, you seem so far along. I finding myself asking you questions that I would ask of someone that was at their Series A round. And I remember thinking and making eye contact with Neka, my CIO, and we kind of smiled. We're like, yeah, we get that a lot. As women and as Black founders, we get met with a certain level of skepticism up front. It's unfortunate, but it's true. And so oftentimes you find yourself in a situation where people are really trying to, what feels like, spit and questions at you to trip you up, or to see how much you know, or how far they can push you. How well do you really know this business? And then meanwhile, the next person that comes up, maybe they're male, or maybe they're, maybe they're not African-American, they're getting softball questions. And so that can be really frustrating. The reality is you're not gonna change some people. The world is what it is. The best thing you can do is prepare. Know your numbers, practice your pitch, be very fluent in how you get up in front of the room, and also do your homework. Make sure you understand your business model, test it with users, try to pre-sell it. That's the best indicator of success, if you can pre-sell it, to be quite honest. And do that hard work up front, because when you do get into the room, it really shows who's done it and who hasn't. And I think that's the best way as women and as Black founders that we can really shine. Oftentimes, because we have to work so hard just to get into the room and prove that we have the traction to be there, I am pleasantly surprised when I'm compared to other fintechs now. Because it's like, oh, well, I know that, we did that, I can answer that. And and if it had been easier, I may not have pushed myself to get to the level where I could compete in that way. So oftentimes, there's a lot of data that shows this, because women and Black and brown founders, minority founders have to work so hard to get into the room and get the yes. We're oftentimes over prepared and oftentimes a lot more successful over time because our businesses have been put through the ringer, versus businesses that get a lot of money up front and then end up wasting and blowing through a lot of money while they do the pre-work that they should have done before they raised. So it can be looked at as a blessing in disguise, or that's how I like to perceive it. And then the other thing I'll say is, you're not going to win over everybody. So get used to know it happens to all of us, right? This is business, it happens in sales, it happens in fundraising. Shake it off, figure out why, ask. Oftentimes, as founders, we never ask why not. We just get the no and we say thank you and walk away. But I've gotten into the habit of, if someone says no, well, please tell me why so that I can improve upon that the next time. Or what was the real thing that gave you pause? I learned a lot in asking that uncomfortable question so that the next time I went into the room, I could prepare. And then the last piece is, you're not going to convince everyone. If it's not a good fit, it's not a good fit. And we had situations where we had to walk away from investors and offers because they wanted us to do things like not have a social impact mission. That's really important to me. We want to do well and do good, and we want to empower the communities that we service. And there were investors that did not like that. They wanted us to be a little bit more predatory in the rates and fees that we were charging. And we had to walk away from those investors. And it's tough to do that when you're raising and you need the funding. But I'm so happy we did, because people that invest in you, they become a part of your family. They own a piece of your company. And if you're not taking money from the right people that have the same values and goals as you, it never works out well. And when we've seen horror stories of that in this industry, for decades. And so find the people that are the right fit. There are a lot of investors out there, a lot of people have funding. They're looking for a founder like you. And so don't push it if it's not a good fit.
No, that is really, really great. That's an amazing story, really inspiring, so many nuggets. And Michael, I want to come back to you for a moment, because I know KPMG Spark partners with a number of organizations, and supporting women-owned businesses and diverse businesses is important. Tell us why that is important to KPMG Spark and some of the things you guys are working on.
Yeah, diversity drives innovation. And so from the very beginning, KPMG Spark has always been about innovating the traditional accounting way. We wanted to make a product and service that brought managed accounting services within an easier reach to small and medium-sized businesses, every background. And so in doing so, we've been able to have a great opportunity to work with partners like Fanta and her team and others who have provided a massive value to Spark as a whole and our clients as well. So these partnerships align with the two KPMG core values, which are together and for better. And so that whole process really just aligns with everything. To have that diversity, it's really important. The phrase and sentence, I guess, that really keeps coming to my mind is diversity drives innovation. So that's what KPMG Spark really is about, is innovating the accounting world and trying to make the best as possible. And we got to do that. We have to do that to be diverse as well.
Awesome. This has been a great discussion. We see the chat is going, and we are going to take closing remarks really quickly from Fanta and Michael. And for those that want to learn a little bit more about KPMG Spark, you can click on the link in the chat to schedule a consult and determine how KPMG Spark can help you get your books in order. For those of you that want to connect with Fanta, link also in the chat. She has some really innovative things going on. Definitely recommend that you get in contact with her. So before we go, really quick, this has been a great discussion. A lot of nuggets, really interesting, really, really happy about it. Closing remarks, we will start with Fanta. What do you want to leave the people with?
Then, there are many, many ways to skin a cat. I started out, I was a diplomat, management consultant, thought I was pretty smart. I figured, it won't take me a long time to raise this money. I can do this with my eyes closed. I'm good at everything I do. Running a startup will teach you very quickly, will humble you, I should say, very quickly. And that's okay, because I had to go through those hard knocks to get the right products and make sure I had product market fit. And figure out how to really do this thing in a way that, has the ability to really scale. And you're not going to know it all up front, and don't get down on yourself. People say tenacity is one of the most important traits of an entrepreneur, and I completely agree with that. Those that stick to it, that are coachable and learn from yes, learn from constructive criticism and learn from mistakes, and keep at it, even when family and friends may think you're crazy, and may want you to stop. From what I've seen, those are the ones that are really successful. And I've used that in my experience as a founder. And the other thing I'll say is there are many different ways to raise. We lean startups, and I strategically tried to delay fundraising for as long as I could. And it was harder, it was more painful. But now I'm in a position where we're able to raise from a much better level playing field. Well, level is relative, but from a much better position at the table than we would have if I had taken on a lot of funding up front without really understanding how I wanted to use it and not having the valuation that we really need in a way that makes sense to maintain ownership of the company. So look at grants. Grants are a great way to build your business. Pre-sales, government contracting is a great way to get some pretty high profile opportunities that are revenue generating from your local and state government. As you build out your product, use lean startup methods as well, and pre-sales and prototypes, MVPs. So you don't have to have a lot of funding up front to show traction, I guess is what I'm trying to say. But be creative about that. And I learned that process through 2 books, Lean Startup and Sprint, and I highly, highly recommend them if you haven't read them already.
Awesome. Great nuggets. And Michael, closing remarks.
Yeah, as you're raising money, you've got a million other things to worry about besides your accounting. So save that headache. There's resources out there for you to be able to save that headache. You can focus your time on other aspects of your business in the fundraising part. KPMG, our customer leads, account leads, they genuinely do care about their clients. They love when they reach out to them. They love to reach out to their clients as well. And they're there to help and to assist with whatever they can. And we'd love to be able to connect with you. And I would encourage you to click on that link in the chat as well and see if there's something we could do to be of assistance.
Absolutely. This has been a great discussion. Phenomenal panelists, really great. Again, click on the link in the chat to connect with KPMG. Click on the link of the chat to connect with Fanta. And Fanta, we are watching you. You are a superstar. We are watching you. So thanks again for your participation, and enjoy the rest of the conference.
Thank you.
Thank you.